All right, welcome back. My name is Anne Marie McCaskill Davis. I'm the Cultural Funding Specialist Senior with the City of Austin's Cultural Arts Division. We are in the afternoon portion of the Elevate Review Panel for organizations. Today is September 7th, 2024. Um, we also have with us today Andre Solomon, who is our equity facilitator, and our tech pilot today is Peggy Ella Thorpe, who is also a cultural funding specialist with the Cultural Arts Division. I'm going to run through for the benefit of the applicants, the instructions that have been given to the panelists. So panelists have already reviewed all the signed applications prior to today and have input their tentative scores and comments. They have the opportunity to make changes before finalizing those scores today based on the discussion that's had here. We are allotting 10-minute maximum per application. These application reviews are going to be recorded, and we will stop the recording and the timer for any technical issues that arise. We've instructed the panelists not to repeat other comments that panelists have already said. However, they can reiterate things that they feel are important. Panelists are not required to score on consensus, so there may be divergent opinions amongst the panelists, and that's totally fine. We're asking them not to provide a numeric score at this time during the live session. We're just providing, we've just asked them to provide overall application comments. All of those comments should align with the review criteria, which is based in the scoring rubric, which has been made available or has been available since the application went live back in June. We've also asked the panelists to look beyond grantsmanship, and they are allowed to use firsthand experience if they're familiar with an organization and the work that they do. And they were also allowed to check out the websites of the applicants, although it was not a requirement. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we'll ask them to turn off their camera and their mic to recuse themselves from the conversation, and then we'll invite them back once that application has been reviewed and we have all the other panelists have finalized their scores. I think that's it. We'll start with every application is assigned a primary and secondary reviewer. This does not mean that those are the only two applicants who are only two reviewers who have reviewed the application. It's just a mechanism for us to be able to ensure that there is at least one person who can speak to introduce the application to the rest of the panel, and that there is a secondary who can provide additional comments. I think those are all the quick updates I wanted to provide to the applicants who may be who may be watching. So I think we're all ready to go. The first application that's up for review for this afternoon is Opera East. Bianca, you are the primary, and Stephanie, you are the secondary. I have the timer ready to go. So Bianca, when you begin speaking, I will start the 10-minute timer.
All right, so a quick overview of Opera East. Their key constituencies are listed as residents of the greater Austin city area and those most in support of the historical East Side community, including art, music, and theater enthusiasts. Diverse artists are served by providing opportunities for performance and fine art exhibits. The youth and the underserved communities are served by education and literacy development programs that are offered. Um, Having been founded in Tallahassee, Florida in 2011, the Southside Arts Complex has over 12 years of service to under-resourced communities. It has provided youth, after-school programming, and arts offerings, including exhibits, concerts, and productions. After losing their facility in 2014, the agency continued to produce art events and programming in support of the arts until having an abrupt halt at the start of the pandemic due to social restrictions. As things reopened in 2022, the organization reestablished some of its programs and relocated to Austin, Texas in 2023. Opera East is a proposal of an opera production featuring an opera composed by an African American composer to highlight Black contributions to classical theater, and provide opportunities for members of professional vocal community of Austin with a focused emphasis of singers of color. The production will partner with Houston Tillotson University, the University of Austin, and Austin Community College by inviting students to participate as vocalists and offering apprenticeships and internship appointments. I like that they mentioned partnering with Houston Tillotson. I feel like the history of service is very vague. The website still says based in Florida, and it seems all focus was outside of Austin until 2023. The applicant didn't provide a clear description of the leadership roles or relationships to key constituencies, and it's unclear if the applicant is the African American composer who is also the executive director. Within the marketing section, I would have liked to see more details such as which churches, which radio stations, and how specifically they would reach tourists. I'll pass off to secondary.
Yeah, I think Bianca touched on a lot of the points of the application that I also saw, lacking some details and clarification on, what have they been doing since they opened operations in 2023 in Austin. I would have liked to see some documentation about events and programming that they've done here so far in Austin. And I would, under cultural leadership, it states that the executive director holds ultimate decision making. I feel like in organizations, when decisions are being made unilaterally and it's one person in charge, you are at risk of not being accountable to the community that you're serving, because you don't answer to anyone. So I think that there is there could be some better like checks and balances there. For, let me see. Yeah, again, just providing better clarification on Facebook and social media about their footprint and their presence in Austin would have been good.
Any other thoughts from the rest of the group?
Yeah, kind of just expanding upon the move to Austin. You mentioned some of the partnerships, but would like to see more on partnerships with Black churches, different, I know you touched on educational institutions, but different nonprofit and community service organizations that already exist in East Austin. I know that there's it's called like Afrotique. There's like a Black ballet dance organization in East Austin. So we just like to see more of a connection to the local flavor of Black East Austin. But overall, I see the mission. I see your history. I see your history of this level of work. But just adding more context to the city of Austin, Black East Austin.
Yeah, they define the key constituency as those in support of historical East Side community, including art, music, theater. And so that's unclear to me because there's assumptions about who that is and who would be those people that are in support. I think we need more details there. And then in the budget, payments to artists is $20,000. It says that's for the featured renowned conductor. Is that the executive director or no? I don't know. I know he's in the payment for the admin support, but I'm just trying to figure out who the conductors, who is, because it sounds like there's just an artist and a principal. Anyway, I was just trying to figure out who those two individuals were, if that was one of the people in lead.
I think if the conductor is a male, then it's not, because the director, she's a Black woman, so I know that for sure. And it didn't look like she had like she's a conductor. Looks like she just solely does community engagement, from what I gathered.
Music education. Okay.
Stephanie, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, looking at the marketing efforts, I would have liked to see more detail, because what I'm seeing here is kind of a very general list. For example, number 10 just says tourists. So I would have liked to see like media outlets like newspapers, radio, advertisements that specifically target tourists. Number 8 says public and private school districts. That is like a lot of these things that are listed are just very vague. And it seems like this portion of the application was not very well researched, because specific examples of news publications, it says local churches, what local churches. It would have been good to see specifics.
Any other comments?
Well, just one other area of weakness in that accessibility response. I have the applicant stating they want to accommodate in every way possible, but there was no clear plan. So in the future, just detail about what that means, because it's very broad.
If I may, unless anyone has a comment, I just wanted to think about considering the capacity of the organization, and then just thinking about grants in general in terms of capacity. One, I think we want to hold people to a standard and acknowledge everyone has the power and capability to write a wonderful grant narrative. But at the same time, thinking about capacity, especially when people are disadvantaged, which means that their resources also might be disadvantaged. Just being mindful of that. And again, I'm also making an assumption here, and I would love to be called in if I'm doing unjust summarizing, but just thinking about capacity and how that might affect organizations, and for people watching, just being mindful of the depth needed when creating your narratives, putting your narratives together.
I want to speak to that because I'm very sensitive to that, and that is at the forefront of my mind as I'm reading these, because of my experience with grant applicants, grant management, grant administration. I know that's the huge hurdle, is just to even put in an application at all, right? And then try to figure out what they want you to say and how they want you to say it. But the struggle is with like the fact that we have specific criteria in our scoring, and it's asking us for specific things, and if it's not there, then we're asked to grade according to that. So like for the example I just gave, I thought that was, I would love to give credit for that, and I'm willing to change my scoring if that's permitted, if it's acceptable, just based on the direction that was given. Though I didn't think that was acceptable. That's just an example, but overall I'm very sensitive to that, and that's a struggle.
Thank you, Natasha. We're at time.
Thank you.
I'll have the panelists go ahead and finalize their scores. Just a point of clarification, panelists may choose to change scores based on the comments that are made during the panel. Just providing that for both the panelists and for applicants participating today. The next application that we'll be reviewing, just as while you're wrapping up those scores, will be LACE, Texas Street Genius Programs. And just give me a nod or a wave or a thumbs up to let me know you're all set. Okay, great. So we are looking at LACE, Texas Street Genius Programs. Candace is the primary, Bianca is the secondary. The timer's all set for 10 minutes. Candace, whenever you're ready to begin, I'll start the timer when you begin speaking.
Great. So LACE, Latino Arts Cultural Education, Texas has historically been an umbrella for youth and adult education programs that celebrate cultural arts and identity. They're best known for a culture revitalization project for fourth grade students at 5 Austin ISD Eastside Elementary Schools. Their program, Street Genius, and I've lost my place, so apologies on that. There's something specific I wanted to mention about that that demonstrates. So, Street Genius demonstrates how if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And it's comprised of leaders from several organizations that include Austin Urban Technology Movement, Frontera, Leadership Institute, 100 Black Men Austin, etc. And so their goal is Black males ages 9 to 15. And they were founded to provide accessible, culturally literate space to grow and launch programs that back a mission. We strive to develop and engage the community in the area of arts, culture, and education through workshops, events, and creative initiatives. 100% of LACE Texas programs were designed to combat long existing but recently trending attack on Indigenous and Latino studies. 100% of programs are based on long-term academic research regarding the transcendent impact of cultural relevancy theory on learning. In terms of cultural leadership, they speak to the fact that they are Latina, executive-led, staff and board with diverse backgrounds. They don't go into detail about that, and I think that's an area that would have been helpful to understand. Also, they list their partners again, which are numerous, but they don't list specific people from those organizations. And I think that would have been helpful to know who they are working with specifically from these organizations and how their voices are utilized in the conversation. In terms of their proposed public activity, while I do understand, and they listed, several programs, I think what would be helpful, not only in this application, but in other applications, instead of listing everything that you do, to be specific about the proposed public activity so that there's no need to infer where that will present. I think they spoke to the intersectionality and a couple of things that I have brought up previously or emailed about and looking at their budget was per the Elevate guidelines, rental of a camera is allowed but not purchase. And then they also had listed a fiscal sponsorship fee. And so I had questions about that as well.
And then before we move into the secondary, I'll just comment on that here really quickly. So if there's anything that's within the budget that is ultimately not an eligible expense, if this application goes on to score high enough to receive funding during the contracting process, the cultural funding staff will go through with the applicant and verify which expenses are eligible and which are not, and make the necessary adjustments. Additionally, since there is a fiscal sponsorship fee, we'll follow up with this applicant to verify if this is a fiscal sponsorship or a nonprofit in its own right, and which may affect which program this application is reviewed in, either Elevate Nonprofits versus Elevate Individuals Creative Business. The scoring rubrics are exactly the same criteria in both programs. They're just weighted slightly differently. So we can take care of that on the back end if it's determined that this is actually a sponsored project. All right, secondary.
Oh, can I say one more quick thing? I'm sorry. So what I did want to say is that overall, in looking at this application, that it is clear their mission and who they serve. And one of the things that struck me in their application was the the empowering of boys 9 through 15 through art, design thinking, entrepreneurship, and holistic well-being. And I thought that was something that stuck out to me that I wanted to share. And now next on to the secondary.
Okay, so to just add on to what was mentioned by Ms. Candace, within the leadership section, I would have liked to see more specifics on those on the board, specifically the names and not just the nonprofits that are attached to it or that they partner with. Generally speaking, I just completed a Hispanic Austin leadership course, and I was introduced to a lot of those nonprofit organizations. So I do know, in fact, they are Latino and Latina based and have heavy leadership within the board of directors. But not having to do that research of the background or without knowing, I would have liked to see who specifically from each organization they're working with. What else? They do have budgeted some support to increase accessibility, including that for the hearing and sight impaired, facilitated by extending partnerships to ties to the Texas School of the Deaf and Blind, respectively. However, they don't mention trained professionals assisting with that. I understand they're working with an entity, so hopefully those are trained professionals, but just mentioning that this would be led by trained professionals, I think could be more clear. Those are my only add-ons.
Thank you both. The space is open for other comments.
Awesome. Yeah. Thought the vision was very clear. Great programming. Just a small item, I think, or a great suggestion. I noticed in the budget, y'all allocated $500 to any cost to submit student work to area youth film festivals. I think there's a lot more to explore from a budget perspective and just I guess doing research on the different film festivals in the city of Austin, across the state of Texas. I think that'd be a really great opportunity to elevate the vision and the transparency of this program and those involved. So just a little note that I think would be helpful.
Just wanted to add this, I thought it was a strong application, great project. The only weaknesses I saw were just those related to addressing the disability piece, having a plan for that, or making accommodations, and then also in their marketing plan, they didn't address how they would reach the disabled population. So, other than that, I thought it was strong.
Yeah, I thought that this was a great project. One thing that I would have liked to seen, since this does service the Latinx community under language accessibility, I would have liked to see more detail on a comprehensive plan on Spanish language accessibility. If this is for students, you're going to have to be doing a lot of communication with the parents. How is that communication being presented? Is it bilingual? Are the translation services that are, the communication that's being written, is it being translated by a professional translating service? Is it done in a way that's like understandable to that community? So I just wanted to, would have liked to see some more details on that.
Other thoughts?
Okay, seeing that there are none, we'll finalize scores. Okay, the next application up for review is Small Wonders Entertainment. Natasha is the primary and Candace is the secondary. Natasha, whenever you're ready to begin, let me just double check everyone is all set with the scores from the previous application. Okay, great. So Natasha, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer when you begin speaking.
Okay, I am presenting Small Wonders Entertainment, and their mission is to use puppetry, the magic of puppetry, to improve the lives of Austinites. And their focus is on the aged population, and specifically those with Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and other mental and physical disabilities. And this includes, it reaches to their families and caretakers, loved ones. And so this is not the primary key constituency that that the city recognizes in terms of like the erasure of cultural erasure, but it's a clearly identified one, and that they stick to that theme throughout the course of the application. They talk about the project being puppet shows that, which I thought was really interesting, uses puppetry and storytelling to stimulate the memories of seniors. And they call it reminiscence therapy to help them connect with their community and their past. And in a fun and interactive way. And so it's therapeutic and it's art. And I also happen to think that puppetry is one of those forms of art that is dying and that you don't see a lot of. So it's kind of one of those marginalized art forms, but that's not what they define as their key constituency here. As far as the history, the founder has a mother with dementia, so she is invested in this community and has direct lived experience. She's done puppet shows for 40 years. She speaks about the leadership as being a 5-person board that either have a parent or a grandparent who suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So they're all connected to this self-identified key constituency. Their plan is to present these puppet shows in senior centers throughout the year, as well as libraries, and it will all be free to the public, which I think is awesome. Considering that, the financial challenges of the aged population and their supporters. And so those were that's the overall just summary, as well as some of the strengths. And then as far as one of the weaknesses that I saw that popped out was just defining the intersectionality. Obviously they're focusing on the aged population, but there was kind of like this anecdotal mention of Jewish heritage, and I wasn't sure how that really tied in to the broader reach or the broader community that they were reaching. So I thought that could have used more work. And then I also did notice that, the funding will be used to create paid positions. That it mentioned that the founder, hasn't had the opportunity to really pay people to help with the project. So that the hope is to use this grant to expand services and to help to support the growth through paid positions. And that's what I have.
So for me, I concur with what Natasha said. Essentially, she covered the majority of my points. I would just mention in terms of cultural leadership, well, I understand she notes that the 5-person board has a parent or grandparent that suffered from Alzheimer's dementia. I'd love to know more about what that experience was for them, because I think there's definitely a difference between having someone with that condition and having lots of support versus someone that you're actively caring for or have really understood what that experience is like. So for me, when I reviewed the application, that was one of the things that stuck out to me that I would have liked more clarification, more details about.
Awesome. I see Neil.
Yeah, great program, great initiative. I'm curious and would love to see more research into the cultural diversity within the aging population, those suffering with Alzheimer's, dementia, kind of previously mentioned, because those are diverse experiences. And not everybody in that community is going to have the resources to be at a retirement, a care center. So knowing what that experience is like for somebody who's living with their child, or doesn't have support. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for growth in intersecting uh, race, religion into what the elderly population looks like in Austin and what those experiences are.
So just to add to this, I did go to their website and their Facebook and Instagram, and I know that they said they are planning on adding a puppet that is in a wheelchair, which is awesome. But I also was hoping to see more diversified puppets. So there's a man and a woman, and then animal. It looks like animals. So just having a broader amount of puppets.
That's a great point. Just throwing my 2 cents in there.
Other thoughts? I would just say real quickly, theme of the day is more detail, more clarity, more research, more, yeah, that. And so just for people viewing this and for all of us here as well, what ways can research and development be more embedded in nonprofits and maybe even grant departments? I think a lot of times people are just, they know what they know, but if we're today calling out research and details, how can nonprofits put that as a priority in their framework and structures? Anne-Marie?
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and finalize scores. And as you're doing that, if you'd like to pull up the next application, we'll be looking at sonic transmissions. And we have Meredith presenting as the primary, and Natasha will be the secondary. I have the timer all set up and ready to go. If everyone's all ready and finalize their scores from Small Wonders. Great. Natasha, are you set? Okay. And Stephanie, you're good? Neil, you're good? Okay. Just making sure. Okay, yeah. So Meredith, whenever you begin speaking, I will start the timer.
Okay, I have Sonic Transmissions, who is planning for the 10th Anniversary Music Festival in September of 2025. The festival will span 3 days and include artists from Texas, Norway, and Colombia. It includes evenings of solo performances from various groups, as well as first-time collaborative performances. The mission of Sonic Transmissions is to bring together musicians and audiences from different communities where expectations break down and new, powerful experiences get created. Overall, in this application, it was really easy for me to understand the vibe of it and the intent behind all of the projects and the activities that were described. There's a lot that I liked about what was here. It was really well organized. There were a lot of details about their commissioning practices, targeted outreach to specific BIPOC and LGBTQ plus community. They mentioned some previous commissions with specific Black Houston artists and musicians, and previous commissioned work from Black Jazz Collective. They provided details about a partnership with Epistrophe Arts to bring Colombian artists to perform with Austin's Colombian immigrant community. There were specific details about the board of directors and the artist advisory panel and how they play a role in artistic decision-making in connection with their key constituencies. They had a really clear plan of activities, including collaborative musical events across the city in various venues on a lot of different areas of Austin. So it seemed pretty far-reaching. They also had really detailed specifics on intersectionality. They spelled out projects by specific artists who represent various identities. There were a couple of things that I would have liked to know more about. This is a tiny thing, but specifying the social media platforms to be used in marketing. They mentioned paid targeting at targeted ads, but I didn't know what platforms. And then I noted that I was curious about this curatorial process that's shared amongst the founder and director and the artist advisory panel, which is composed of the musicians that have played in the festival previously. I I wondered if there was room for outside voices, since these were all people who were internal to the organization, and I didn't go into great detail about those outside voices. But I did really find that the whole purpose of it was really clear that the purpose of the festival is to highlight those connections across different cultural expressions and traditions around the world here in Austin, and to connect those communities as well.
Okay, you ready for me to go? Yeah, okay. So I did think I agree the mission seemed far-reaching. I liked, the emphasis on like global connection, outreach to like global audience, and kind of, bringing different aspects of the artist community together, right? Cross-cultural, cross-genre, multi-generational. So I think that's needed and good, and strengthens the cultural community and the artist community. I did notice in the leadership, and I don't know if this is a point that I'm sure it will be clarified. Chris Cogburn, he's involved. We also reviewed his application for No Idea Festival. He's listed on the advisory board. I don't know if that's an issue at all. Probably not, but I just thought that was interesting. There's a connection there. And then it looked like most of the leadership's involved in some aspect to the music world and from some form of a marginalized community. Again, those are not necessarily those at risk of cultural erasure, but they self-identified them. And as far as intersectionality, it wasn't as clear to me. I saw a mention of BIPOC, LGBTQ, but I feel like we've heard that through a lot of these applications. Like they mention these groups, but or applicants will mention the groups, but it's not clear. I don't know if we're supposed to infer that just from the mention of them, or that's kind of hard for me to parse through sometimes. How are you addressing the intersection specifically? And that wasn't as clear, but I did give credit for the fact that it's a consideration.
Thank you, Natasha. And before we open it up to the rest of the panel, I just want to address other mentions of applicants serving on boards or advisory boards. That's totally fine. Often Austin's arts and cultural community is fairly small overall. And so a lot of artists tap into folks who have their own organizations and vice versa. And, it's a network and a community. And so we don't necessarily prevent that from happening within. Honestly, we encourage collaboration as much as possible.
It's a good thing. I think the only thing that that causes any kind of pause for me, because I'm all about collaboration and helping each other, especially provide more access to a wider variety of organizations and populations or whatever. It's just that sometimes it can become a little insular, where the money's just rotating among a group of people who know each other and are helping each other. So that's the only thing I would be concerned. I don't know if that is the case here. It probably isn't, but it's just something to note.
Go ahead. Okay, cool. Yeah, just wanted to say again, would just love to see a more detail in what demographics are being served by BIPOC. I want to see a percentage. I know it mentions that we have featured these groups, but you could feature one Asian person and have 99 of another group, and that's not necessarily going to show that y'all are prioritizing that. So we just love to see more numbers to show the priority in these different groups.
And I thought it was a detailed and well-written application. One of the things that I particularly liked was the amount of detail in the budget. And I thought it was very clear how they would be using the funds.
Oh, go ahead, Natasha.
No, you please, you go first. I'm just adding on train of thought.
One thing that I really liked about this application was in cultural activities that the program that they have, it has a date, venues, the day and the performers. So it shows that they are working, they have a timeline and that they've already scoped this out 1 year in advance and they have these artists booked. So that shows like intentionality of what they want to accomplish, the goals. And since this is, you see the event spaces like Saturday, it's at the Mexican American Cultural Arts Center. They're doing different venues around Austin, which I think is nice because it's going to broaden their audience.
I'm just having an internal conflict here I just want to share because like I know in these applications they have to show their ties to these at-risk communities and marginalized communities, but sometimes it feels a little weird to see like all these labels slapped on people, you know, Black, gay, LGBT, you know what I mean? It's like we're putting them in these little boxes, and I know we have that's necessary to identify who we're serving. You just hope that, you know, I don't know. It's like I said, it's just a little, sometimes it feels I don't know what the word is. Like, it's just, you know, the purpose of it is really just to get the points and not so much for the intended purpose, which is to actually embrace, you know, those populations and those communities and serve them specifically. And I don't know how to overcome that, but that's just.
I would like to, I think what you're raising is very important. The whole idea that people want to be identified, but then the other side of it as this is who we are, and kind of not bringing like this heightened uh, attention to it. I think this happens a lot in the queer community in particular. So I just want to say that I hear you and I see you, and it's really complicated when people want to be identified, but also people want to just be. Um, Something else that I really want to highlight too, um, with Neil talking about demographics a lot. I'm also thinking too about just kind of the exploitation that has happened from individuals who face oppression, and how getting data and feedback, quantitative, qualitative, can be tough when they have been constantly used for other people's progress.
Thank you.
You're here.
We're gonna close on that note. Go ahead and finalize your scores, and we'll move on to the next application up for review. We'll be moving on to Walking Shadow Shakespeare Project. Meredith has a conflict, so she will be turning off her camera and muting her mic. Neil is the primary and Stephanie is the secondary. And I just want to say that these conversations we're having are really wonderful. And I'm glad that we're going deep with our panel discussions. If everyone's let me know with a nod or a wave or a thumbs up. Great. Okay. Neil, you're all set. Wonderful. Am I set? Yes. Okay. So, Neil, whenever you're ready, I will start the timer when you begin speaking.
So, Walking Shadow Shakespeare Project's mission is to unite classical texts with our contemporary community through innovative and accessible productions, social events, and educational opportunities. The organization recognized that Shakespeare and classical text has historically been associated with the privileges of race, time, money, and education. And Walking Shadow aims to dismantle those barriers in their community for both audiences and artists by making their shows fun, free, fast, inclusive, and accessible to all experience levels. Their key constituency communities are LGBTQIA plus, people of the global majority, and women and the financially disadvantaged. Um, this organization clearly illustrates they have a strong production history. The founder's background in her dissertation being centered around conversations of race and gender. I can clearly see that in the language of this grant, that she understands the art, the importance of language in trying to illustrate diversity. I love that they pointed out that they are trying to have a color conscious casting, that all roles are open to actors of the global majority with care to not reinforce racial power imbalances on stage. Some things that I would like to see is more clarity on how how the board members' identity informs their cultural experience within that designated demographic. Would love to see a greater breakdown of the cultural demographic of the global majority involved in production and representation. One point that I thought was interesting was the comment is editing racially insensitive language in the text, eliminating characters praise light and disparage dark. I think that I love that this was pointed out, but would possibly want to provide some pushback because sometimes when you completely remove problematic issues, it doesn't allow authentic conversations about it. It's like if we're talking about Nazi Germany, we got to talk about the horrors of it in order to have a meaningful conversation moving forward. So just wanted to provide a little bit pushback and thought on how those could possibly be opportunities to further explore these marginalized communities. So that is it from me. I will pass it on to the secondary reviewer.
Hi. Yeah, I really enjoyed this application because I felt like it was very well organized. It was very easy to read their goals, their mission. And I saw it as that they were taking, Shakespearean text and reclaiming it for today's audience, which I think was great. I appreciated that their cultural activities were very well organized. They have a breakdown of everything that they want to accomplish and the performances that they're going to have for next season. And also on their website, they have those performances listed, which shows a commitment to the public that they are going to produce those shows and they are moving forward with it. So that signals to me, once you've made an event public, that we're doing this, we're moving forward. So it's a commitment to the project. So I enjoyed those aspects.
All right, open to the group. Any comments?
I love this application too. It's one of my top applications just because again, it's it's repurposing, or not even repurposing, but making, refocusing like the reach of this art form, and or this the Shakespeare, which is not something that's always accessible. The only weakness I saw was in the cultural activities response. They did identify appropriately the key constituency, or that those that are at risk of cultural erasure. I just didn't see it specified as a goal. I didn't take a lot of points off of that, but I just saw that it wasn't it was proposed as one of the key goals in as they develop their activities, or part of making the goal, or part of the goal, but it just wasn't specifically identified as like a I don't know, maybe like a performance measure. I don't know, but that's the only note I had. So I guess that speaks to accountability, is what I'm trying to say. Accountability to that key constituency.
Other thoughts? Not calling out, but calling in Candace or Bianca. Any thoughts from you? But just saying, you don't have to. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead and finalize your scores. And as soon as everyone has finalized their scores, we will bring Meredith back. So just give me a nod, or wave, or thumbs up when you're set. Great. Thank you. Okay, Meredith, you may return. We're going to go ahead and move on to Creative C. Stephanie is the primary, Neil is the secondary. Stephanie, the timer is all set on my end. So whenever you begin speaking, I will start the timer.
Okay, so the mission of creative social engagement through the arts as an Austin-based nonprofit to the mission to meet the challenges of social inclusion through creative action. Their vision is to create C works with a range of multi-general musicians, teachers, and technicians. And their key constituents are seniors experiencing social isolation, aspiring musicians, both young and old, seeking music instruction in real world settings. The constituency is primarily composed of white, Black, and Latino musicians aged 12 to 80. And the Black, Latino, white, Middle Eastern professional musicians working as mentors for less experienced artists as cultural activists, preserving and advancing their ethnic heritage. Looking at my notes, I would, because one of their key constituencies is largely based on youth musicians, I would have liked to see more information about how youth are incorporated in decision-making, how they're incorporated into the creation of the programming. So that's something that I would have liked to see. The budget looks pretty comprehensive. And yep, I think that's it. So those are my key points.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. Clearly show great leadership, or sufficient leadership. Would love to see a greater breakdown of the specific BIPOC communities served, and would love to see a greater breakdown of the demographics of the assisted living centers that are being engaged in. Very important information as we try to make this as inclusive and engaging as possible with underserved communities. So yeah, those are things that I would love to see.
Oh, sorry, one more comment. in trying to get more information about this nonprofit, I tried to access their website and it was down, and I'm seeing that it's still down. So, that is the very public facing outlet where people go and try to find information and resources about your organization. So I would have, liked to see that information available.
Other comments?
Okay, seeing that there are no additional comments, go ahead and finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing scores for Creative C, you can go ahead and pull up Austin School of Furniture Foundation. Bianca is the primary and Stephanie is the secondary. And if everyone's finalized their scores from the previous application. Okay, thank you. Right. Stephanie, are you all set? Okay, great. Thank you. Bianca, whenever you're ready to begin, I have the timer set and I'll start timing once you begin speaking.
Okay, so I am the primary for the Austin School of Furniture Foundation. The Austin School of Furniture Foundation, ASF, is dedicated to transforming the woodworking and furniture making arts landscape in Austin by educating and amplifying marginalized and underserved populations. And they mentioned that while they have primarily served non-marginalized students in the past under their for-profit organization named Austin School of Furniture and Design, their opening of the 501(c) nonprofit last year, and current transfer of operations to the nonprofit is a direct result of their commitment to expanding their reach and inclusivity. Their goal as a nonprofit is to further diversify their student body by increasing outreach to underserved communities and offering scholarships to those in need while reducing class costs and other barriers across the board. The Austin School of Furniture and Design was founded in 2018, and in 2023, Austin, they brought on a female nonprofit development professional as an executive director to co-lead the transfer of the operations. Overall, it was a well-written proposal. I think that based off of their cultural leadership section and the rubric, only some of the applicants' administrative and creative leadership have a deeply rooted cultural understanding and or lived experience. Let's see, that was one of my main notes. Overall, the nonprofit has great plans in which their content will benefit key constituencies and their communities. I thought it was really cool that they added a women's and non-binary introduction to woodworking course. Let's see. They're one of the leaders plans on constructing a wheelchair accessible workbench. It's really cool that while working for the nonprofit, they're also working in the nonprofit. And I just have that that this nonprofit was created for a for-profit organization whose goal is to become more equitable. They have excellent intentions and show a plan to reach equitable goals that serve community and groups that are at immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement within Austin and or have institutionally been marginalized and underfunded. And I'll hand it off to secondary.
Yeah, so I think I saw, for me, I saw some challenges with this application, and I think that it stems from the nature of the organization, that they are transitioning from for-profit to nonprofit. And I think there's a lot of hurdles that they're going to have to, overcome to get the nonprofit side kind of built up. Because I saw a lack of details in the application that I would have liked to see, and that some things were not as well researched as I would have liked. For example, within the key constituencies, it talks about like a scholarship program, and it's like offering scholarships specifically for marginalized students, which include POC, LGBTQ plus individuals, women, veterans, to ensure they have access to our programs. I would have liked to see, are these full scholarships? Are they, is it a scholarship that doesn't actually account for the majority of the tuition? Like what does tuition look like for these programs and workshops? Because even if you give a 50% scholarship, that other 50% can just be inaccessible to a lot of groups for monetary reasons. So I would have liked to see more just more details in how they plan to like execute transitioning over to nonprofit.
Other comments? Natasha?
Yeah, the thing that stuck out to me is when they broke down, and I understand they're transitioning. They are aiming to reach a wider audience of those that are marginalized, specifically to artists at risk of cultural erasure and displacement. So, but when I look at the breakdown of who they're currently serving, that concerns me. There's not even 1% African American. There's 8% Hispanic, and I just feel like this is a trade that would be so valuable to all groups, especially marginalized groups. And it would be a valuable, trade to learn. And I did see in their marketing, they're aiming at focusing on outreach to those communities. I just don't know that I saw a commitment throughout the application, like a clear intention and plan. Like even in intersectionality, it says from the board of directors to staff and guest instructors, they all try to contribute to diversity and inclusion and guide key decisions and activities to always keep equity in mind. And that's a broad statement, and it sounds good, but it just doesn't sound intentional. It just doesn't give me confidence, I guess is the word, that there's a specific plan in place to do that. And with like I said, there again, we have the POC thing, like people of color could be a lot of things. And when we see this is at least the importance of seeing that breakdown, right? Because what we've been talking about the whole day is like, what's the breakdown of these, BIPOC groups or POC groups? Sometimes when you see this breakdown, you see there are missing communities that are missing representation. And so that's the case here. So they did mention it. But again, I didn't see an intentional effort in the application to say what was their specific goal in terms of what groups are increasing, and like who are those communities. And that's what I would have liked to see.
Other thoughts? I would just say, Natasha, you might want to say something else, but quickly, I think you're really making good observations again about the nature of these types of grants. Again, this is again talking about marginalized groups, people facing cultural erasure. And so in my back of my mind, it's like, what are people going to do to fit into that? Even the good and the bad. And so that just keeps coming into my mind of like what to say again when money's on the table. But I see you have maybe another comment.
No, the only other thing that I saw was in the budget, and just payments to admin is like 52,000. And I understand that that's something that's allowed in the budget. but it seems like the payment to artists is only 6,000, so I don't know if that's an issue or not.
In terms of aligning with the program guidelines and the scoring rubric, the priority is that payments are going to a person, be they administrative support or artistic support, or both. There isn't necessarily a value that we're placing on administrative over artists or vice versa. But it is a good note to make. All right. We're at 1 minute. Any other final comments? All right, go ahead and finalize your scores. Okay, that brings us into our afternoon break. We have 15 minutes. Let's come back at 2:30. Let's just call it 2:30. And we'll get back to wrap up our last 5 applications. All right, see you at 2:30. Welcome back, everyone. It's waiting on a few more panelists and our facilitator to pop back in. And we'll get started with our last 5 applications of the day. Thanks for being here and getting through this with us. Almost done. Hey, Andre, welcome back. Welcome back, Meredith. Welcome back, Neil. I'm just waiting on Natasha. While we're waiting on Natasha, if you want to go ahead, if you haven't already pulled up, welcome, Natasha. Go ahead and pull up Nomadics is on the up and up. Let's see who's the primary on this one. Candace is the primary. Bianca is the secondary. I have the timer ready to go. So Candace, whenever you begin speaking, I will start the timer.
So Nomadics is on the up and up. Their creative mission is to initiate a cultural exchange project where 8 artists from all around the world will participate in the up and up Austin camp for 8 weeks. And they're introduced to the music scene, equipped with the resources available in the city, such as local music producers, live music venues, music studios, etc. I will start by saying that in reading their mission, it is not clear to me the artists that they serve. They mention 8 artists from around the world, but give no particular details or an idea of how they determine which artists to bring into Austin. Regarding how they meet the needs of their key constituencies, our foundation encourages the creative economy. We support creative entrepreneurs and social change through creative products. We organize events, produce content, and conduct studies to bring together creative leaders, educate entrepreneurs, and foster a thriving creative economy. Our ultimate goal is to unite people through creativity, transform the creative industry, and uplift communities. Again, in reading through that response, it is challenging to me to understand who their key constituencies are, how they serve them, where there is impact. Their cultural leadership, their co-founder moved from Mexico to Austin 11 years ago. She does have creative leadership that she works with. It is not clear from my reading of the response how that creative leadership is utilized and feeds into the organization, the proposed activity. A date is given, but no additional details. In terms of accessibility, language accessibility, it is mentioned they provide assistance to talents by request. They talk about housing for those artists that they bring here is a ADA accessible facility by itself, but is not considered to be specialized. So in summary, I would say that in reading this application, I needed a lot more detail, a lot more clarity, a lot more understanding. It sounds like a great project, but there's a lot of details missing to help me understand again how they're picking these artists to come here, what all that entails, who's making the decisions, if they're using their creative leadership for that, what the actual project is. So on to the secondary.
So to leave where you lead off where you finished, I also feel the same way that there was vague information utilized. Getting 8 artists to travel into Austin doesn't make them marginalized within Austin. Therefore, it's not rooted in serving communities that are at immediate risk of culture erasure and displacement within Austin. I would have liked to see how I think if they put more into, I guess, the thought of what they would do once they were over here and added more detail to what those artists would do, and not just they'd go work out and work on mental health and get English tutors, but would they eat at Black-owned restaurants? Where would they plan their workout? Is it at a marginalized or underserved gym? Leads on who the English tutors, who would they be, pending the language and countries that they come from? Would they utilize El Buen Samaritano? I think more it could have been worked further. Those details could have worked further to help them get this grant. I think intersectionality is considered, but it's not a key component. The proposal attempts to be inclusive and intersectional, but involves community voices late in the process. And with this nonprofit being international, I would have expected to hear more about the language transitions and how they would plan to lock in others from different countries. Generally speaking, the organization, I think, will have a good impact on tourism once they come in. We can
Thank you
open it
both.
up.
I'm curious for anyone on the panelists, maybe the positives. Again, everything is for growth, but just curious too if anyone had any other comments on positives out there that they'd like to bring up. If not, anyone else, please speak.
I'll say something positive. I think the idea of bringing in international artists is a great idea to help diversify art and culture in Austin. But as we said with other applications, it's got to be, impacting. They have to be accountable for the impact they make in the Austin community, for the funding to be justified, I think, regardless of where they come from. And then also just a clear understanding of who they're reaching, who's involved, who their audience is. But overall, the intention to bring in international artists and help them to grow and share their art and culture is a good thing.
I also want to add, I think that they did a really good job noting what their activity timeline would be regarding starting in January 29th and giving a bunch of different stages and what they would be doing each day. There was a lot of thought put into that.
Other thoughts? Neil, I saw you move forward, so didn't know if you had. Okay. Any other thoughts out there?
I think it's brave for someone to move here from another country and be, and have the courage to like throw something out there. I haven't even put in a grant application for anything. I've been having ideas for years. I haven't done an application yet. So congrats to the applicant.
I would piggyback on that. I felt that this application came from a really personal place for this applicant. The language used in the cultural leadership describing their personal experience really, I think, shaped the entire project itself. And I think I'll echo that that was it's a very brave move. I personally don't think I would have been able to do that.
Any other thoughts? All right, Anne-Marie.
All right, finalize your scores. Well, as you're doing that, we'll pull up the next application. It's called Music Mixer ATX. Natasha is the primary, Candace is the secondary. And if everyone will give me a nod or a wave or a thumbs up to know when you're ready. Okay. And Natasha, are you all set?
Okay,
All right.
ready.
All
Okay.
right. I'll start the timer as soon as you begin speaking.
Okay. I am discussing Music Mixer ATX. And this is a project that, well, this is an organization that started in 2022, if I have my facts correct. And they've been active for 2 years, and their key constituency is our constituencies are musicians in Austin, primarily from BIPOC groups and LGBTQ communities who want to advance their careers but don't have access to resources, networks, and infrastructure they need. That's directly from their application. They do a good job of starting off from the beginning on identifying exactly who they're targeting, who their key constituency is. There's no confusion about it. The gist of the application is that, you know, this being a live music capital of the world, so this is the name, is what they call it, that there should be more access. It should be easier to access for the local musicians from those BIPOC and LGBTQ communities, and that a lot of them are not. They identify socioeconomic barriers as one of the reasons that people don't have access to those opportunities. And this group is focused on creating opportunities for networking, for developing these musicians professionally, to like basically get them into, you know, the inner circle, so to speak, to be able to get employment for all, because there's great opportunities, obviously, if this is the music capital with so much tourism. So it sounds like their goal is to create those opportunities, kind of create a showcase so that musicians can come out and network, work together, play together. The application says that 75% of their events are attended by 75% of their attendees, that's different, are BIPOC, and they don't break down specifically what those communities are. They do say that they plan on reaching the communities at immediate risk of cultural erasure, through marketing tools. So this is their target audience: BIPOC, LGBTQ, and those that are at a socioeconomic disadvantage, who just don't have the money, the tools, the resources, the networks, the whatever, to expand professionally in the music industry. As far as their history, they've already done 30 events. They do these music mixers where musicians register. They register to participate. And from what I gather, in that registration, they tell what instruments they play, and I guess what other role they play in the music industry. They can meet each other, form ensembles, they perform for a live audience, and then I think they also are photographed by photographers to help develop their press media kits, which helps them to further develop, you know, themselves as artists. They described a typical music mixer as 75% BIPOC, as stated earlier, 40% identifying as LGBTQ, and 80-90% from low-income communities. I did make a note about that. I don't know how they would determine the socioeconomic background of attendees, but maybe that's something that they survey during registration. What else? Let's see. The leadership was described as half musicians and most BIPOC. So they have a good representation, you know, within their leadership of the key constituency. In their activities, the cultural activities, they described to me, a clear plan, and not only a clear plan for what they're trying to accomplish, but also what their desired outcomes were. And I think that's important because it gives us a compass for, you know, what do they planning to do, and then what are they hoping will be the eventual outcomes? Like, what is their due north, so to speak? So that was clear to me that they're, ultimately just trying to get more musicians, more opportunities. Intersectionality, it sounds like it's BIPOC, low income, and LGBTQ. They state that very clearly. There's no really guessing about that. They say primary intersectional identities participating in our events are blah, 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 blah. And I like that. It's there. I don't have to try to figure it out. Accessibility and the language don't need more work. I think those were the two weak areas that I saw. They didn't have enough accommodations for the disabled, and they didn't have a clear plan for language. And that's it. That's what I have.
Helps to have that on. So in regards to this organization, I thought they had a solid marketing plan too. Lots of methods in which to reach out to their key constituencies as well as tourists, etc. Which I thought they had again a solid plan, and also a solid budget for the most part. And that's all I
Other
have.
comments? Thanks, Candace. Other comments?
So I'm seeing that they were an awardee of a grant in 2023. For me, I would have liked to see more specific information on their past success with the funds that were used. Like the artist served, the audience size. That would have been nice to see. Like if this is a continuation of their programming and all that, I would have liked to see like a success story.
Other thoughts?
Okay, seeing that there are no additional comments, you may finalize your scores. We are going to move on to Collide. Meredith is the primary, Natasha is the secondary. And let me pull that one up here. All right, if everyone is done finalizing their scores, I have the timer ready to go. So whenever you begin speaking, I will start the timer.
Okay, I am speaking about Collide. Collide is a nonprofit organization that creates art projects that eliminate barriers to contemporary art and performance. Their key constituencies include historically marginalized and underserved artist community, youth from Latinx communities, and other audience of diverse socioeconomic background and demographics. Their 2024-2025 season includes free and low-cost performances, workshops, and installations across Austin. The season includes the art of birding, sound gardening, which is a bilingual community gardening project presented with the Mexican American Cultural Center, Symbiosis, an immersive and interactive installation focused on wildflowers in Texas, World Listening Day with Phonography Austin, and a series of all ages accessible educational community workshops focused on art and ecology. What I liked about this application, again, this is another one that I really felt what the vibe of the application really was from the get-go. I'm gonna pull up the other notes here. The mission at the heart of the organization is to create these art projects that eliminate barriers, and they mention that throughout the application, barriers to art and performance. They gave some details about how Latinx youth have been engaged over the life of the organization for the past 10 years through a partnership with the Hispanic Alliance for Performing Arts, which provided paid performance opportunities and artistic collaboration. I really enjoyed the specific addition of performing in public parks that eliminate economic, education, and cultural barriers, the actual venues that these events would take place in, by their very nature, often remove those barriers. They have historically had financial payment to in support of artists, and their history of service included some information about some past projects that centered on relevant topics to the key constituencies and the Austin community in general. I would like to know more about the accountability in their cultural leadership to the Latinx youth served. They mention paid student interns and performers from UTSA. It's not very specific about anything beyond that. And then I would have liked to see some more information about how they have expanded access in an impactful way for individuals with disabilities. They mention ADA compliance, and they also highlight some collaborations with mixed ability dancers and disabled performers. But I would be curious to know more about how those accommodations are being made moving forward. And I will pass it on to my secondary.
Secondary here. The key I cannot say that word all day today. Constituency. This was identified as BIPOC, and this is one of the earlier applications I reviewed, and I remember this stuck out to me because BIPOC is the term it's used, that it's clear that the focus is Latinx communities, which is awesome. It's just this is where these terms can get confusing because I don't see representation for any Black community, members. At least it's not stated. It could be in there, but it's not. From what I could read, it wasn't the focus. So I would encourage the use of a different term if that's not part of the focus, because it can be a little misleading. But I mean, overall, the project itself does have a clear focus and a clear aim, which is commendable, and they have a clear program plan. Let's see what else I have in here. I did think the cultural leadership was a little vague too. It's just like a laundry list of, they say 80% BIPOC and LGBTQ, I believe, and it's just kind of vague as to what categories those people fall into. But I guess we just take their word. I'm not sure how to determine whether or not that fits the criteria, but I think that could be a little clearer. And then for cultural leadership, I had a note that applicant does not make clear the board of directors' connection to the key constituency. So, it's inferred, I guess, here. But again, to me, they didn't clarify the key constituency as being Hispanic. It was BIPOC. So then you cast a wide net, and then I feel like you need to make it clear in your leadership who within, you have to make a connection between the two, the key constituency and then the leadership, and just for consistency purposes. But other than that, everything, I thought it was a good application overall. I like the project, just those details. I'm looking for any other notes I can add. Did I have anything from marketing? It looks like I had something from marketing. I'm sorry, 1 second. Oh, no plan for marketing to disabled or groups with a primary language that's not English. I didn't see a marketing component for that. And that's it.
Other thoughts from other panelists? If I may, and I really appreciate Meredith speaking to this, the public park component. I am really a nerd when it comes to third spaces, and I do think third spaces are actually face erasure, especially as they kind of align with people and spaces and things of like gentrification and all of that. So just be mindful to all of us and whoever is applying, past, present, future, thoughts about space and how that kind of intersects in terms of people who are facing oppression. Love Third Spaces, would talk to you about it all day. Thanks.
All right, with that, let's finalize your scores. And then as you're working on finalizing your scores for Collide, you can also pull up Russian Speaker Society of Austin 24-25 concert season with Music Without Borders. Neil is going to be the primary and Meredith is going to be the secondary.
Anne Marie, I'd have to go off camera. I
Okay.
know 2 more left. I'm available. I still can speak, but I just have to go off camera.
Okay, thank you. All right. Neil, if you're ready. I have the timer started. I don't have it started, but it will be started once you begin speaking. So whenever you're ready.
So the Russian Speakers Society of Austin builds musical bridges between performers and audiences with a focus on spanning the cultural gap between Russian speakers hailing from Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East, and non-Russian speaking Austinites and tourists. The big program is the Music Without Borders program, which traverses time and place, honoring figureheads of classical music and contemporary composers from Russia, Central Asia, and even Texas. Very clear, very well-defined mission of what the Russian Speakers Society of Austin intends on doing. They pointed out that they have almost an exclusively female-led board, and very evident they have a great history of service to the Russian diaspora and a very strong production history. Would love to learn more about the I guess struggles and displacement of the Russian diaspora in Austin or in America in general, to just kind of add more clarity on why this group is in danger of cultural erasure. Would love to see more research on how this project could reach new communities, and would love more information about the diversity that exists within the Russian diaspora, race, religion, sexual identity. I think that would make this a much more compelling case for this grant. And that is it for me.
I don't have a lot to add because you were so thorough. I really understood the creative mission of this application. It was very clear to me. They wrote that they welcome all who are interested in the language and musical performances, food and cultural practices of Russian-speaking countries. And they also mentioned that within the rehearsal process of their project that they outline, they provide mentorship and gigging opportunities for artists of any background, not exclusively Russian or post-Soviet, who are able to expand their portfolio beyond activity at their music departments, which I assume is the college students in the music departments of UT or other universities around the area. I really liked that they also mentioned that there was an online community that they served, so it expanded the reach of their mission, perhaps to those who may be unable to leave their homes. I would have liked to see a little bit more information about, I'm coming back to this again, adaptations and accommodations for people with disabilities. They mentioned the physical access of the facility that they're in, which I'm familiar with. and ADA compliances, but they don't necessarily have they didn't outline a clear plan for additional accommodations for that community. But I thought overall this application really did serve the key constituencies that they mentioned. But to echo what Neil said, I would love some more information about the community itself and how that community has what the history is in the city of Austin specifically.
Thank you both. Other comments?
All right. Seeing that there are no additional comments, you may finalize your scores. And we're moving into our last application of the day. It's called Junkyard. Stephanie is the primary and Neil is the secondary. So go ahead and finalize your scores for Russian Speaker Society. I have the timer ready. Let me just, is everyone all set and ready to go with Junkyard? Okay, great. Stephanie, are you set? Okay.
Sorry, I just need to unmute myself.
Oh, that's okay.
So Junkyard's mission is to rebuild, let me start over. The diverse and culturally rich Austin music community is battling a crisis, and Austin's legacy as the music capital of the world is on the line. Musicians, songwriters, venue owners, door people, bartenders, and anyone else whose livelihood runs parallel are leaving Austin. Junkyard's mission is to rebuild this community at risk of cultural erasure and displacement by providing meaningful resources to help them survive and thrive. Its creative vision is to provide free space to write, rehearse, record, sleep after a late night show, store gear, collaborate, and perform. Junkyard takes scraps. So they are transforming these retired gas-powered Capital Metro buses into ADA compliant and Fair Housing Act designed music pods via vehicle transfer agreements. So something that I really liked about this application was the website that they have, because it gave you a like actual visual of what, because you're sometimes you're reading the application and you're like, man, like I wish I would have like what are they envisioning. So they give like really great details of how they're going to transform these spaces and how artists are going to be able to utilize them. So that's something that I really enjoyed about this. I think that it's great that the key constituents are live musicians and giving them direct services on spaces, because something in some of the other applications that we've seen is the high cost of venues and rehearsal spaces are making it challenging for live performers, musicians to practice their art. So that's something of note. One challenge that I saw with regards to the application was that kind of concerned me was that the marketing budget for this application was 8 times higher than artist fees. So the artist fees that they designated was $4,000 for bands performing at 3 events. So in my mind, if I divide 4,000 by 3 and then break it down from there, like, okay, well, they're going to probably have this many performers or what have you. I would have liked to see more detail in that. That number per artist seems to be kind of dwindling when compared to the $33,000 marketing budget, which was the largest line item. And also the second largest line item was payments to admin support, which is fine. But a lot of it was going towards legal contracts and not actually, the customization of these buses into the music pods, which, you know, I would have liked some more clarification on that. Like, where's the funding coming from for actually transforming the buses into music pods? That would have been helpful. So I'll turn it over to the secondary.
Thank you, Stephanie. Did a great job of thoroughly reviewing that. Yeah, the visuals, the mission, the innovation of this is very clear. There were a few things that caught my attention and made things a little unclear. One of the comments was male white European population is declining. BIPOC population is increasing. So curious as to why that was put there, because it can be very misleading. I don't know if you're inferring that the male white European population is the community at risk. BIPOC population is increasing. There's statistics showing that some of the BIPOC community, especially Black, is disappearing at an alarming rate. So I just wanted to point that out. Another comment, guided by a DEI policy to operationalize equity. Just would love more clarity on what that means. It kind of does look like, let's just put something DEI related to make this a qualifying application. Don't want to assume that, but that's how that can be interpreted. But yeah, would love to see more work on expanding and articulating how the project could serve underrepresented communities in the Austin music space. I can make the assumption that it's serving Austin musicians or it's serving a low SES demographic, but amongst that low SES demographic, amongst Austin's population, what groups are disappearing, and how can this organization better serve them? So that is it for me.
Other thoughts from the panelists? I'm hearing conversation about the community at risk. So I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that.
I agree what was stated about that. I had that similar concern, and also looking at their cultural leadership, and actually looking up some of these organizations, and I did not see diversity represented there either. So that was something I would love to know more about, in terms of, I know what they've listed, but if they're involving their musicians and how they're involving their musicians, and again, more of what those musicians look like, in terms of being a part of this experience. Because the way I read this, a lot of this is driven by Michael Winningham. And so again, I just would like to see more voices involved, or it be made more clear whose voices are involved with this organization.
Other thoughts?
I agree with, yeah, I agree with what was stated as well. That was a major concern for me. Even just asserting it or even mentioning it raises questions, and really doesn't fit within the guidelines of what is identified as a marginalized community. So, I mean, you can assert anything. You can assert, bunny rabbits are, at risk of cultural erasure without support and without, clarifying that point. It's just kind of extra.
All right. Any other final thoughts? Oh, Bianca?
Yeah, so just again with the DEI policy, I was mentioned, I would have expected and hoped to see more details and not just DEI policy.
Okay. If there aren't any additional comments, you may finalize your scores. And as you're finalizing those, that concludes our panel. We do have a panelist debrief that we'll do immediately following this, where we'll collect feedback on the process from the panelists. I want to thank you all today for this deep discussion, and really in appreciation of all of your efforts in scoring and reviewing these applications, and really keeping in mind the scoring rubric. And I really appreciate Andre and Peggy being here and supporting us through this dialogue. So for the panelists, if you would like to just close out of this session and then log back in with the same link, we'll do our wrap up. Thank you so much.